the supply side?
So in hindsight, like that's why when I have this sort of interviews, I like to be as honest as possible,
Yes.
so that I don't give off the air of somebody who has it all figured out. So
Yes.
like hindsight is 2020, like they say, because
100%.
it looks like, oh, it's an obvious, why was nobody solving this problem before?
Yes.
But now that we're doing it, and when we started, it wasn't so obvious because, one, if you understand the food business, especially restaurants, they're very stuck in their ways. Like, they don't want to figure out a new technology or figure out a new system of doing stuff, as long as, especially in the African space, and actually not just the African space, because
Correct.
even in England, where I live some of the time, it's very similar. They're very stuck in their ways. So introducing new processes to them, even if you say it's a new technology, is very hard for them to pick up. Let me give you the context of why. Because restaurants are known for, like, every restaurant is known for a particular kind of taste. So the chicken you eat at one restaurant is going to be different from the chicken you eat at another restaurant. The way they prepare it is different.
100%.
And so now the processes that go into making that type of chicken, it is very hard for them to tweak it to get the same results. Because every time I go to, say, X and O Chinese restaurants, for instance, I'm going there because of the taste I want to get from there. So if you want that restaurant to change their process, which might affect how their product tastes, they're very reluctant to it. So it wasn't really an obvious problem to solve. The problem was there, but it was going to be a difficult problem to solve. Now, I say this in hindsight, because at the time, as with a lot of founders, you underestimate the problem, which is why you give yourself a chance to solve it. Because if you go in there understanding how big the problem is, you probably won't even want to go in there. So we got 100%. In there, and then when we started to solve the problem, a lot of people started asking and saying what you said now, like, why was nobody solving this before? This is very obvious, but it's not very obvious because it's a hard problem. It's still a hard problem to solve. That's why a lot of people who got into the market after us, trying to do what we do, most of them have gone out of the market because it's very, very difficult. It's a difficult problem to solve.
So, take me through the process of, one of your spouses going to the market, buying stuff, delivering, to the point where you said, wait a minute, this is potentially scalable. Building your first MVP. I noticed you told me you funded this yourself from initial. At what point did you think that you may need external funding? How did you navigate that ecosystem? And and what advice would you give to founders across Africa as far as your journey is concerned?
Okay. This is a very, very, very important question, and I like that you asked it. Because again, when founders are telling these stories, it sounds very rosy and very, we just did one and two things and it just happened this way. So there's a lot of context here, and that's why I like to share context so that people have background information of how it works. We were all top executives at the different places that we're working at. So I was CEO at the media company, etc. Like I built a career outside of this. And that career had helped me to understand Africa's different markets. Because I had at different businesses, I was running teams across different countries in Africa.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Tunde.
Yeah.
What you've just said is crucial. In fact, of just having a conversation around the same thing. Most people, including ourselves in Africa, sometimes tend to think that Africa is one homogeneous market. I've got news for everybody. It's 54 different countries.
Different countries, man.
Over to you.
In fact, in the same country, you have different regions and different states that operate.
Absolutely.
So, anyways, so I'm just giving that context so that you understand that we didn't exactly fly into this as novices. Yes, novices in the sense that we were not professionals to say in the agri sector, aside from our childhood backgrounds, but we came into it with proper business acumen. And
Okay.
like I said, I had run teams across different countries in Africa. Olumide too had worked in different countries in Africa at the time. Gatumi was the co-founder at 54 Gene. At the time, it was one of the biggest biotech startups in Africa. So we had Wale was an IBM consultant in Nigeria building AI
So
and
a diverse team.
yes. So we had a diverse team. So that helped a bit, like not a bit, it helped a lot with getting an MVP off the ground. Now, in terms of figuring out the business potential, like I said, I had these experiences. And so during that period when we decided, you know what, let's even think about this and see what's possible here. Like as I traveled, I put my ear to the ground. Like I when I eat at restaurants, I'll ask the same questions. And incidentally, before that,
Mm-hmm.
when I used to work at these other companies, every time I would visit a city that I had not been in for maybe a couple of months, you would notice sometimes either the restaurant you went to had shut down, or like the service was noticeably degraded. And so when this started looking like an opportunity, I started to ask questions, and the questions usually always went back to procurement processes, like getting, because like think about it this way, like the quality of what you get into your organization determines what output you can put out. And for food businesses, is the food that they prepare. So the quality and the consistency of what they get in determines what the output they put out will be. And so a lot of these businesses usually trace their issues to procurement and backroom operations. And so it was almost a no-brainer for us when we put two and two together and say, you know what, the food market in Africa is projected to hit about $1 trillion by 2030. I think those projections have gone up again through the AFDB. And so we're like, you know what, and currently is valued at about $300 billion, $330 billion or thereabouts. So we're like, you know what, even
So
if we
in
just
less
start
than 7 years, it will quadruple.
exactly. Like, so we're like, you know, even if we launch this and do not leave Nigeria, Nigeria has 200 and something million people.
250 million.
Over a million type of these businesses. Now, so aside from the medium sized to big chains, you also have millions of all these roadside guys who sell food on a day-to-day basis. So that's one fact. The second fact was we did a bit of research and we realized that your typical African, especially using the average Nigerian, and it's also very true for Ghana and true for other countries to a large extent, who live in big
Okay.
cities,
Yes.
eat out every day. They don't like a lot of them, especially in Lagos, don't cook at home because like you leave your
It's
house
too
very
hectic.
yeah, you
It's
leave
too
your house very
hectic.
early, get back home late. So your food needs are met either at work or at a canteen nearby or at a restaurant. So the market for people who eat out is huge. So our estimates put that at around 700 million Africans eat out daily. So just
Wow.
the end of that is also a huge potential market. So like we put two and two together and like, you know what? Even if we solve this problem and just solve it for some states in Nigeria, like it's a huge enough problem not to think about the potential for the whole of Africa. And so from funding the initial side gig ourselves and then
Mm-hmm.
setting up like a small MVP to see how it worked, we decided to put like a thesis together, like we wrote a thesis and then put it in a deck. And then we approached some of our early stage investors in the ecosystem. They're close to
Angel
us. It was
investors mostly.
yeah. But it was more like a family and friends round because we knew these people personally.
Yeah.
They're the investors in
Yeah.
some of the businesses that we know. And because they knew us personally too, like they could vouch for our pedigree, like the things we've done before,
Oh,
etc.
yes.
So they gave us our family and friends round raised about I think $120,000 if I remember correctly. Just
So
to
this was what, 4 years ago?
yeah, about 4 years ago. So just to 4 years and 6 months ago. So
Four
just
years
to
and
like
6 months ago.
yeah, just to like put together this MVP properly and see if we could scale it on
Scale
it,
it.
like scale it to like say 100 businesses thereabouts. And so that's how we kicked off. Our first order on the platform, which we call our first day in business, was on January 1st, 2020. And so that's when they started
I
officially.
love that
So
you remember that.
yeah. And so we'll be 4 years officially on the 1st of January 2024.